Gen 3 has a lot of cool and interesting mechanics. We have abilities that were introduced. We have a number of things. And one of those things that make the games memorable is the berry system. But the berry system didn't begin in Gen 3. It actually was available in Gen 2, and it has actually been a staple in the series, of course, where we are seeing different ways to harvest berries, collect them, use them, and so on and so on. And Gen 3 went wild with them. In revisiting Pokemon Ruby, as I've been doing, and as some have pointed out as their own little favorite details to the region and to Gen 3, some of those favorite details entail the berry system that is ingrained in the game, because it's a big ingrainment into the game, and there's a lot of berries and a lot to it. And I want to take this video to talk about the little details, the little nostalgia, and also how things work, comparing Gen 2 berries to Gen 3, emphasizing Gen 3, the berry mechanic and stuff. I think it's really interesting. I thought so before doing some research and everything and doing this, and yeah, I can confirm it's super interesting. So let's go ahead and dive into it. But if I'm ever missing something or get something wrong, or if you'd like me to know something, definitely don't forget to leave a comment and stuff. I will get to you there and appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video as well if you like this kind of thing. Helps me out a lot. But yeah, alright, let's go. Gen 2 berries. In Gen 2, berries were introduced as held items for Pokemon. They weren't, solely strictly for that, but that was the main intention, I would say. There wasn't actually a lot of berries at all, and they were meant to be, like I said, held by Pokemon, and they had very simple mechanics to them. So berries got introduced, and you give it to your Pokemon to hold it. They had important effects, and the names gave that away a lot. So they were simple names that got changed later on, but let's look at these berries and their names and what they turned into in Gen 3, because these berries turned into something in Gen 3. Different name, different thing. Alright, you have the regular just berry, which it turns into the Oran berry, so you heal 10 damage. You have the bitter berry, which cures confusion, and it was succeeded by the Persim berry. The burnt berry, which cures freeze, and was renamed as the Asper berry. Asper? I think Asper. The gold berry, which restored 30 HP, and was then later named the citrus berry. The ice berry, which cured burn, and this turned into the Rost berry. The mint berry, which cures sleep, and was made into the Chesto berry. And then the miracle berry, which cures any status condition. That was created to be the Lumberry. The mystery berry restores 5 PP and was turned into the Lepa berry, renamed. And then two interesting ones, the PRZ Cure berry, which cured paralysis, was going to go on and be named the Cherry berry. And then the PSN Cure berry, the poison, cured poison, and then was made into the Pecha berry. As you can see, the berry idea was very simple in the beginning, but once Gen 3 hit, they decided to really go into berries. They introduced tons of them and completely renamed the basic Gen 2 names, which is honestly a good change. However, the Gen 2 ones are a lot more clear on what the berries actually did or what purpose they would function as. It's very clear to be I need to get this burn off. Let me get my cold freeze berry, let's say, ice berry, or vice versa. There was little confusion about what the burnt berry or ice berry were, and maybe the mint berry can even be I imagine a strong smelling mint placed under someone's nose, and it's a nice wake-up call. The changed names were brand new, and people needed to learn them, and maybe that's why it was difficult for me to remember all the berries and their names and what they did, all those together. But I think that really helps the immersion by creating these new and unique berry names, and they do have an identity of their own. When I saw some footage of obtaining berries in Gold, Silver, Crystal, I was immediately recognizing the fruit-bearing trees, as they would be known, as apricorn trees, as I knew them in the remakes, HeartGold, SoulSilver. You wouldn't expect to find berries like those mentioned before in these trees. You'd be finding apricorns. You still would be able to do that in the old game though, but just not to the degree that HeartGold and SoulSilver had it. They really took over the region with only apricorn trees, it felt like. And of course, you could collect Apricorn to bring to Kurt, and then he would give you a special Apricorn Pokeball in return once he made them. Really awesome stuff. You can plant them in the oh-so-important berry pots. This is HeartGold with SoulSilver. I say this is extremely important, especially for Oran berries, because I used up my final Oran berry early on, and now it's becoming a beast of a task getting more Oran berries to then give the sick Miltank who needs them. Note to self and note to all, you probably already know this rule, but I'll say it again, maybe don't use your last berry of something. Keep it around so you can simply plant it and get more berries. Unfortunately, I can't really grab an Oran berry from the store, but there are different ways to get some, so I will have to do it. Yeah, the berry pots allow you to plant berries and then have them sprout into more berries. They even do the same sparkle as the Apricorn trees do when they are growing to the next stage, which I think is pretty neat, since in the original Gold, Silver, Crystal games, I don't believe you had the option to grow or cultivate them in a similar manner, like at all. In Gen 3, you did, and that's where we hit the ultimate berry generation, I would say. We touched on it already, but Gen 3 renamed some berries so you wouldn't be encountering things like PSN cure berries anymore. And many names are based on real fruits. Many berries are also just based on real fruits. The cherry berry for cherries, pecha for peach, nanab for bananas, pineapple berry for pineapples, tomato berry for tomato, corn berry for corn, the watermelon berry for watermelon, and so on. Those are just some examples, but there are plenty more. You can come across berry trees very quickly in the game too. It's like the first initial route as you pass through to Petalburg. I can imagine it was an exciting feeling of curiosity for everyone who had that initial look at them and then walking up, pressing A, getting to pluck berries. At least for me, it was very fun to shake and grab berries. And once you do, the soil is left empty and ready for another berry to be planted. And it's important to plant berries in the game since once a tree is gone, it's gone. So POV, you just took all berries in sight and the soil has nothing there anymore. Press A again, it allows you to plant a berry. And I also found this so charming and cool at the same time as a kid, probably because like the cycle and the mechanic was much more fleshed out and in your control, let's say, because you could plant them in these spots and you could harvest them and do everything with them, and you were much more involved. I used to love, and still do honestly, the image of the bump in the soil indicating that you just planted a seed or berry there. The next step was watering them, and this can be done by picking up the Whalmer Pail watering can from the flower shop outside the woods. In there is presumably the owner, who talks about her dream of bringing many beautiful flowers and fruits into the world, and she recruits you to also share that dream and urges you to go plant berries. She serves as a good NPC who explains the berry mechanic for players, or at least, gives them some information at the start, right when you have berry trees you're seeing. Then there's a familiar girl who gives you the Whalmer Pail. This thing is handy, not just in immersion by watering your plants with the cute pail and stuff, watching them grow, but it can bring more berries to the tree if done correctly. There isn't really a wrong way, let's say, to water berries, but there are some factors to consider. The watering makes it a little faster, and tending to your berries is just a positive thing all around. I remember being very diligent about this as a kid. I knew exactly where my berries were, and I would go and make sure to water them every day. So getting the Whalmer Pail was vital. I also found it so charming and such a cute thing to have since it's based on like a little Whalmer, and I love when it's stuff like that. In Gen 2, you got the squirt bottle, which was primarily used to just get the Sudowoodo away from the path you need to go through, but then in HeartGold SoulSilver, you can also use it for your berry pots, and you get a nice close-up visual of it sporting this Squirtle theme rather than Whalmer. Also, you can plant berries in these spots of loamy soil, and it always says and specifies loamy soil, and I never looked at the definition of it until now, so forgive me for not knowing anything about gardening and plants, but seems loam soil, I hope I'm saying it right. Loam soil is full of nutrients and moisture, much more, that makes it different from other soil. While in my HeartGold playthrough, I didn't see any loamy soil out and about. But you can actually purchase different fertilizer at the Goldenrod Flower Shop where you get the squirt bottle. There's a number of them available, and they can be used in your berry pots to help berries grow, as well as give other effects. They even do acknowledge what fertilizer is made of, at least part of it, in the Pokemon world. And they have different effects on the soil, like we said. Like, growth fertilizer speeds up berry growth really fast, but it dries out the soil faster as well. The damp soil makes drying out not as likely, but at the cost of berry growth, which goes very slow. Stable mulch lets berries stay on longer before they're dropping off, and gooey mulch allows for berry plants to regrow from dead plants to become more likely, I guess. This is some fancy stuff with some fancy effects. Back in my hoeing days, we just had loam soil to work with. As for my oranberry dilemma and not being able to help Miltank, there are ways to find berries again, as well as oranberries, such as exchanging shards, I think, or nabbing them from some wild Pokemon who might have it. Small chance, but they might. Originally, Gen 2 had berry basics, as I said, and it was overhauled in Gen 3. Berries were no longer mostly used for Pokemon to hold on to and restore health or help them during battle. Another huge aspect of berries became Pokeblock and the role in contests. I still remember my first experience with the berry blender and how confusing this square machine looked inside and out. Seeing the berries drop in was always satisfying though, and the mini game you play where you have to hit the button just right is also a fun thing to try. I know as a kid I was supposed to be maybe more methodical about what berries I use, considering based on what Pokeblock they would turn into, what specific properties they had, and what was meant to make the certain Pokeblocks I needed. But, it didn't always work out that way. I just like putting them together. The berries do come with berry tags, which show more information about them, but I was content making whatever I could make. Then feeding the Pokeball the block that was made, and sometimes they loved it and sometimes they didn't. The berry tags were helpful in displaying the information you would need for making the right Pokeblocks you needed, but there was also even some info that didn't really matter or have a role in anything in the game, such as firmness and size. But at least it's just extra fun details, and I really like that it was included anyway. There are so many berries in Gen 3. There's 43. Yeah, that many. The Bulbapedia section is dense. It even has math equations here for the yield, but yeah, so many berries. Jeez. And then there's seeing the berries growing on the overworld. I couldn't get enough of that as a kid, and even now I love seeing growing plants. The stages are pretty distinct and also feature dialogue associated with them, and I just really like it. Too bad I won't see it in my Ruby version until I change the battery, because every time I boot it up, I get the same familiar message of the battery being dead, and unfortunately that would mean the berry cycle's not playing out in real time or anything. It's not too difficult to replace the battery or take it in and out, so I'll need to probably just do that. But that is something to keep in mind with these older Gen 3 games, if you still have the cartridge around and get the message. But it's no biggie. Of all the berries, I have to say that the Enigma berry is my favorite, and it's mysterious. It couldn't be legitimately obtained in the Western versions, it looks like, and it was simply like a placeholder for data. It came with a lot of restrictions, it seems like. In the Generation 3 games, an Enigma berry cannot be stolen by thief or covet, or exchanged by trick. E-reader berries held or consumed by another player's Pokemon will appear as Enigma berries in the Cable Club Coliseum. The player will not be permitted to enter the Pokemon Cable Club Trade Center, the Pokemon Wireless Club Union Room, or the Pokemon Wireless Club Direct Corner Trade Center if a Pokemon in their party is holding this berry. A Pokemon holding this berry cannot be traded to Pokemon Coliseum or XD, nor can it be stored in the Western versions of Ruby and Sapphire. But in the next gen, it seems to be available but just rare. And same with Gen 5. It can be found, I guess, in the Battle Subway NPC partner or something as an occasional held item. Interesting. I mentioned it was a placeholder in Gen 3, and in Gen 3, apparently it was for placeholding data from Pokemon Battle e-cards. Now, you may already know this, but there's also a special category of berries which are e-reader berries, which just means, more berries to the Hoenn berry decks. This time through a card. If you had the cards to scan, the little e-card things, you could scan in Ruby and Sapphire to get some special e-reader berries. There's a good number of them, and I have to say that owning the cards would be like a flex to have and collect. I love that. But these berries are so special, you can't really transport Pokemon anywhere if they're holding them. But it doesn't end there, because there's also a subcategory of the e-reader berries that are Japanese only. I can't believe the layers happening here with all these berries, and I'm learning about so many berries, new ones that weren't in my mind before. Also, I love and appreciate all the berry art and designs. The designs are fantastic for a made-up fruit that also needs to be able to fit in the world it's in, and I think the game does a really good job of that, and the designers made some really good berry designs. Even the ones based on actual fruit and things like that, they're still recognizable to the real world counterpart, but like still done in a great way to make it its own and pretty unique, rather than a clear copy. It's great. I really liked seeing the overworld berry trees, even if sometimes they did not match at all with the berry in my head. It was still cool to see all these unique trees and bearing whatever berry they have, but you could just grab them. The other main big difference is the berry growth and harvesting mechanic. So the harvesting is very different from Gen 2 in the sense that in Gen 3, you were able to harvest and make and get berries your own way, let's say, harvesting it yourself, you know? So Gen 2, berries were obtained through events or certain locations, and the trees were pretty much the same and whatnot, and there wasn't really a dynamic growth and harvesting mechanic. Gen 3 introduced that cycle of planting and then watering and then harvesting the berries from the trees, which all of that adds a new gameplay depth to it. You know what I mean? It definitely feels more hands-on. It definitely feels more personalized because, as I said, it's not just waking up the next day and seeing that the same trees are there or they had berries or something. It's up to you to make berries happen. And that is sometimes really fun, but that can also be sometimes really frustrating, I bet. But overall, I think it's a good thing. I think it's really fun, and it really drew me in as a kid because I was able to have that unique, sense of responsibility over my berries, and I was the one who, chose where to plant them, how to get them, whether I watered them or not, all these things. You know what I mean? Then there's also new types of berries like we talked about that was introduced with unique effects and whatnot. And then we also talked about how contests were here, and contests have a big role with berries in them because berries are needed to make Pokeblock for the contest. And then for that reason, you're going to be wanting to get some berries, different berries for whatever you need. You can always check the tag for what you're looking for. I really like it. Oh yeah, so I have to slot in the Berry Master too, because if they put in a character named the Berry Master and put emphasis on that, then that's a cool thing to put in. Okay, anyway, in Johto, you have the Berry Master on Route 30 in a small house with a tree next to it and stuff, and, can't miss it, all that, but he gives the trainer a regular old berry, explains how berries work. But then in HeartGold SoulSilver, because the berry trees become the apricorn trees, the man talks about apricorns and no berry master. Sad. What a big loss for Johto. In Hoenn, though, we have the berry master located on Route 123 with a house with a large garden, 12 spaces for berries. That's a sight to behold, and I still love it. I don't know why. I know it's just pixels and stuff, but it's like a huge grand scale. This guy lives on acres of land, it feels like. Anyway, every day, the Berry Master can give you 2 berries, randomly selected, and sometimes you can get identical ones and different ones. But it's cool. There's also the Berry Master's wife, and she's a bit more interesting. So the wife asks the player about good sayings once per day. She then rewards the player with a rare berry when she's told a lot about each of 5 specific phrases, and will only give a rare berry once for each phrase. So in Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, you give her a 2-word phrase once per day using their little phrase system. And if the player tells her one of 5 special phrases, they are given one of 5 rare berries. But yeah, you can definitely get rare berries from her. Had to mention it. Apparently, the Berry Master's wife also mentions 4 grandchildren. 3 of them are the girls at the Pretty Petal Flower Shop on Route 104. Overall, it's really cool. I love the detail that is the berry mechanic and mechanism, and I think it's really great. I know in this video we talked about just Gen 2 and Gen 3 with a main focus on Gen 3, but I know that there are some interesting berry mechanics in the later games that come after this, and let me know if you want to hear about them. We can talk about. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching up to this point. Like I said, it helps me so much, and I'm just happy to see ya. If you want to leave a like, comment, subscribe for more, that would be incredible. But thanks again just for watching, and I hope you had as much fun as I did on this. Let me know your thoughts down below, and yeah, thanks again. Bye-bye!